From Coin 6, your local election headquarters, this is an Eye on Northwest Politics special.
Gun violence and crime, they're plaguing Oregon right now with gun violence at a record high. The problems are amplified in the state's largest city and the state's economic hub, Portland. Portland police say there were 90 homicides in the city just 1 year ago. Now police say that we're on pace to match that in 2022. I spoke with each Oregon gubernatorial candidate on the issue of gun violence and crime on our Sunday political show, Eye on Northwest Politics, and here's what they had to say.
If there was a piece of legislation out there that would stop criminal activity, I'd be all about it. But gun violence is already a crime. Every bit of that is already criminal activity. So what we need to do is have more law enforcement to enforce our existing laws, ensure that we continue to maintain high standards for background checks, and recognize that what we need to do is enforce the laws that are on our books right now.
Standing up to the gun lobby and saying we should have common sense gun legislation and gun regulation here in Oregon. And as Speaker of the House, I supported background checks for firearm purchases. I supported a red flag law that said if you have a gun but you're in danger to yourself or others, it can be temporarily removed. I also supported safe storage laws that says you can't bring a gun into a school building.
Tina wants to take all your guns. Christine says the status quo is okay. I believe we have to do something. And I would offer that part of that something is, while I'm not going to disarm any law-abiding citizens that are exercising their Second Amendment right to own firearms, I think we need to raise the age limit to purchase certain guns from 18 to 21. And then the thing that I feel the most strongly about is to toughen up background checks.
Back here with Dana Haynes. What's your reaction to those responses on how the candidates plan to tackle gun violence in the state of Oregon?
It's an incredibly complicated issue and really tough to get at. One candidate says we need to hire more police officers. That's difficult to do because it takes so long to train police officers. There's a backlog. Every city in the nation is trying to get more police officers right now, and they're having a tough time getting enough candidates. I think we all agree we don't want less training for police officers, so that certainly isn't the answer. The other thing on this issue is I'm from Idaho, and you know, gun owners generally favor a lot of the stuff that comes up that's called gun control from the gun lobby. I mean, the gun owners that I know, they favor at risk of keeping guns from people who are at risk of violence, keeping out of hands of convicts, red flag laws, universal background checks. You'll find that gun owners support a lot of this common sense stuff. If some of the politics could get dialed down from the lobbying firms, I think we could be able to pass a whole lot more of these things. And by the way, does it help at all when Betsy Johnson says Tina wants to take away all your guns? No, that's neither helpful nor accurate. So if we could dial down some of the rhetoric and just pass some of these laws, I think we would see they would have some effect on the gun violence. And there's a measure out there that might just do that.
Yeah, we'll talk about Measure 114 in just a moment here. But, you know, when we look, especially here in Portland, I mean, we just see gun violence escalating weekend after weekend. I can't tell you the number of times I come in Monday morning, anchor a newscast, and we're talking about the shootings in Old Town. This happens every weekend. I mean, is there any way that we can get a handle from your viewpoint on just the constant violence that we're seeing, and in many cases happening in similar areas of the city?
Well, yeah. If you look at the gun violence across the nation, it's surging everywhere. It's up 33% in a decade nationwide, according to the Gifford Center. So tough laws, weaker laws, cracking down on crime, those things don't seem to be any kind of magic formula whatsoever. Getting to the root causes of why people are angry and have guns might. You guys reported, we reported that the Oregon Health Science University did a study talking about gun violence as a public health crisis. The next governor can do that as well. The next governor could say, I want the Oregon Health Authority leading the way on gun violence. Why are people angry and carrying around guns? Address the causes there. That might go a long ways towards solving some of it.
Viewing it as a public health emergency.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned this. There is a gun control measure on the ballot in Oregon. So let's talk about Measure 114. Measure 114 includes a requirement to get a permit from your local police department to purchase a firearm. It would also ban the sale of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, with an exception for members of the military or law enforcement. In our political coverage, we've heard from both sides on this issue. The measure was put on the ballot by the group Lift Every Voice Oregon. That group started their work in response to nationwide mass shootings. Reverend Dr. Leroy Haynes, though, says Lift Every Voice Oregon also hopes the measure stems rising gun violence and homicides locally.
We have weapons of war that are being used really on our streets today. Anytime you see a shooting, a report that 60 shots were fired and 100 fires were shot at an apartment, that's an automatic weapon, quasi-automatic weapon.
But the National Rifle Association does not think Measure 114 will make anybody safer.
Not only is this the most egregious gun control program, but it does nothing to address gun violence. In fact, it will actually just be a systematic end to lawful gun ownership in the state of Oregon.
And Dana, that seems to be the crux of the argument. We're struggling to deal with reducing gun violence while not infringing upon the rights of lawful gun owners. How do we reconcile that?
Well, I think the Reverend Dr. Haynes had it right, because all those police reports that you get and I get on Monday morning always show the number of casings. There were just 60 shots fired, 70 shots fired, 80 shots fired. We're seeing that all the time. So that one, I think the stats are on his side. I also think that it's true that, as I said earlier, let me not say most, many gun owners favor things like smaller magazines, universal background checks, getting a permit. You'll find that a lot of gun owners are perfectly happy with that. They think that'll get guns out of or more guns out of the hands of bad people. So I think there's a common sense, common ground. I think this might be part of it. I do object to the fact that any effort is always called evil or communistic by the National Rifle Association. I'm leaning towards the Reverend Dr. Haynes.
So you think that Measure 114 might at least move us in the right direction?
That's right, and just move us in the right direction. There's a whole lot more. And you hit it on the head earlier. It's a public health crisis, and as we find out why people are angry and are violent, and if we can do anything to address their lives that makes that less so, that'll have a huge impact on it. And also, if we can get rid of some of the guns on the hands of people who shouldn't have them, clearly that'll make a difference. So this seems like baby steps, but baby steps are better than none.
Not necessarily the case here in Oregon, but nationally, people have been talking about an assault weapons ban. We did have one on the national level for a while that expired. Is that part of the solution as well?
My own personal opinion is yes. Nobody actually needs one of those. Hunters don't need them. Nobody needs them for safety of your house. A handgun will do that. I think the assault level rifle is not a necessary thing for a civilian to have.
Yes, and we're talking about, AK-47s, AR-14s, the guns of choice for a lot of the mass shooters nationwide.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Up next, we're going to talk abortion rights. Do they play a role in this midterm election? And if they do, are they a major factor? Plus, local congressional races under the national spotlight. Why what happens in Oregon and Washington could have political implications nationally. We'll be right back.